So this past fall, Nicole and I were preparing to take our eldest child, our daughter, off to college. And I had heard many people share with me over the years how difficult that process is. And I was troubled because I wasn't finding it very difficult. I was excited for her. I was feeling like it was the right time for her and for us. And everything seemed to be going as planned. The morning came, we helped her pack her car. I had my coffee ready. I put the address in my GPS, and I got into the driver's seat, and I headed down the street, and I turned left, and I saw her high school where she'd been for 4 years, and I felt something strange rising up within me, and I found myself choking up. And so I tried to avoid this awkward moment where the daughter has to take care of the father on her big day. And so I said, "Would you like to play some music?" And her response surprised me. She said, "Sure, Dad, whatever you want." So I found my iPod, I hit shuffle, and sure enough, the first song that showed up was a song by an artist, Heather Morgan, that we had seen together, she and I. And I kid you not, the song is called 100 Miles, and we were about to embark on a 100-mile journey to her school. But what got me was a verse in the song that said, "'Cause I'm letting go of something I still want to hold." And I lost it. I was just a puddle. Tears are flowing, and I'm trying to keep my eye on the road, keeping my hands on the steering wheel, trying to avoid this awkward moment when she sees how slayed I am by this moment. And I realize there's no moving forward without acknowledging grief, without acknowledging the pain that is present now because the joy has been there. And later, when we arrived on her campus, the school officials were apparently ready for me because the schedule was really clear. 9 to 12, drop off, 12 to 2, lunch, and I kid you not, 2 p.m., parents leave. It's kind of harsh, isn't it? Jesus' words seem kind of harsh, don't they, to Mary Magdalene? I mean, Mary Magdalene is a dear friend of Jesus. He loves her. She loves him. They've been on this journey together, and she is grieving his death, and she's probably horrified and traumatized by the way that he has died. And so she says to the gardener, "Sir, if you know where he is, please tell me, because I want to go see him." And in the few moments that follow, she realizes who the gardener is, and she says, "Teacher." She sees it's the risen Christ, and there are tears that flow, to which Jesus responds, "Do not cling to me." As if Jesus is saying to his dear friend, don't cling to me. Let go of me. Let go of who I've been. Let go of who you thought I was. Last year, the Easter message was distilled into one line. Easter isn't about resuscitating the old, it's about resurrecting the new. Today is part 2 of that. And here's the message in one line. We can't receive the new until we're ready to let go of the old. How often in your life is your response to some new invitation a gut reaction or a grief reaction? Tell me where you've laid the old, because I want to go there and resuscitate it. But that's not how resurrection works. We have to let go of the old in order to receive the new. And as a friend of mine says, letting go hurts like heck every time. But it's always worth it in the end. The truth is, resurrection is not for the timid, as Father Ron Rolheiser says so beautifully in his poem about this very scene between Jesus and Mary. He writes, "Mary herself, had we ever found her gospel, would, I suspect, explain it in this way. She would say, I never suspected resurrection and to be so painful. to leave me weeping with joy, to have met you alive and smiling outside an empty tomb with regret, not because I've lost you, but because I've lost you in how I had you. I want to cling despite your protest, cling to your body, cling to what we had, cling to our past. But I know that if I cling, you cannot ascend. And I will be left clinging to your former self, unable to receive your present Spirit. We think the Easter story is all about resurrection, but resurrection is just a part of the Easter story. The Easter story begins, as we remembered this week, with the passion and death. And it continues for 40 days to the ascension, where Jesus ascends as Christ to the Father. And it concludes 50 days from now on Pentecost, when the Spirit is poured into the church. And of course, Pentecost is just a new beginning of the same mystery. You see, the whole Easter story includes suffering and grief, resurrection and ascension, and new life empowered by a new Spirit. So today we're just part way through the story of Easter. Today we find ourselves at the pivot point between the resurrection and the ascension to come, which I think is where many of us are right now at this point in our lives. You see, the global pandemic has brought its share of suffering and death, hasn't it? And yet, isn't there a sense that something new is being offered in and through the pain, some glimpse of the resurrection that we still need to ascend to? Perhaps you've been given a glimpse of something new, perhaps a new awareness or a new insight. Maybe you've discovered a new rhythm or a new balance in your life or in your work life. Maybe you have a new set of values and priorities. Or maybe you have a new understanding of justice or a new understanding of faith. And if you listen closely, I promise you will hear two voices. The one voice calling you to cling to the old, and another voice calling you to let it go. I've been thinking about the journey of a butterfly, and it is one of the classic symbols of the resurrection. And it's no wonder that it became that, because it is a miracle that this caterpillar crawling on the ground, crawling up trees and on leaves, somehow is transformed into a butterfly that can fly all over the place. And it happens because the caterpillar is willing to let go, to stop eating, to find some twig or some leaf to hang from, and to spin a silky cocoon. And within that protective casing, it dissolves and digests all of its existing tissue and begins its death as a caterpillar. And what's even more remarkable is if you were cut open the caterpillar at the right time, this caterpillar soup would ooze out. This soup that seems like an amorphous mess, but is actually a highly organized group of cells known as imaginal discs, which not only survive the digestive process, but contain within them the adult body parts that the mature butterfly will need. The discs use that protein-rich soup all around them to fuel rapid cell division required to form wings, antenna, legs, eyes. It's a miracle. But if you've ever watched a butterfly emerge from a cocoon, you know it's an ugly mess. It is long. It is painful to watch. And if you have any compassion in your heart, you just want to jump in and help the butterfly get out quicker and easier. But here's the thing, if you were to do that, you would hurt the butterfly, and she would no longer be able to fly, because it is the struggle out of the cocoon that pushes the fluid down the side from which the butterfly's wings emerge. Can you think of a place in your life where you are resisting the call to let go of the old Now, before you beat yourself up, understand this. This is normal. Resistance is normal. It may be futile, but it is normal. And it is healthy to question the call sometimes. Because the reason that letting go hurts so much is often we're called to let go of something that has been very meaningful to us, that has served its purpose for a time. But now the times have changed. Resurrection is hard because it challenges us, like Mary, to let go of something that has served us well and even helped us become the person that we are today. The reason it's hard to bring your infant baby home from the hospital is for that little window of time after the child was delivered, you were a patient and other people were caring for you. That's hard to let go of, right? The reason it's hard to bring a child to preschool and to kindergarten is because you have enjoyed that unstructured, informal, spontaneous time of play. The reason it's hard to drive your child to college is because you've thoroughly enjoyed watching them grow into the person that God has created them to be. The reason it's hard to watch your child walk down the aisle and commit to a new life, a new family with a new partner is because you've enjoyed having that child in your family. All of this is hard, but it's necessary. And in that moment between the resurrection and ascension, it's actually helpful to hear the words, do not cling. Do not cling. I think Christ was speaking to me in that moment in the car as I was moving past Northern Highlands High School. I think Jesus was saying, don't cling. It's better for you that she goes away. There will be sadness now, but I promise that sadness will turn to joy. And one day she will stand before you as an adult, able to give you the much deeper gift of her adulthood. Now you may be sitting there thinking it's cruel to talk about letting go and death and suffering on Easter Sunday. But here is what I think. I think it's crueler not to. To pretend that this isn't part of the Easter story is a lie, and I don't want to lie to you. It began and it continues. Paul says, when I was a child, I spoke like a child. I reasoned like a child. I thought like a child. But when I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. The truth is, the Easter story isn't simply about the resurrection. It includes the suffering and death, which is what prepares us for the new life. And our experiences of resurrection, I think, are God's way of keeping us moving forward. Moving forward. Here's how the poet Christian Wyman puts it. He says, faith is not some hard, unchanging thing that you cling to through the vicissitudes of life. He says, those who try to make it into this are destined to become brittle, shatterable creatures. No, faith never grows harder, never so deviates from its nature, and never becomes more destructive than in the person who refuses to admit that faith is folded into change, and it is the messy part, the messy process of our lives. The truth is, God will not force you to change and receive new life. God won't do that. But the full Easter story assures you that God will give you many opportunities, and God will give you a new spirit and will equip you in your ascent to new life. For the God of the passion, the death, and the resurrection is the God of the ascension and the Pentecost. And Easter isn't just about celebrating one day in human history. It's about understanding the nature of reality, of everything. For what we see in Jesus Christ is the pattern that we see if we're paying attention all around us and within our own heart and soul. For it is the universal pattern of everything. It's the caterpillar's journey. It's the child's journey. It's the parent's journey. It's the grandparent's journey. It's the godparent's journey. It's aunt and uncle's journey. It's the human journey through the seasons of life. And it is the journey of faith through many stages. And as we gather here today as a community of faith, let's remember that it's our story. We shouldn't be surprised that we're part of that same pattern, that there is death and resurrection and the invitation to new life. Why would we be absolved from that pattern that's part of everything? Here's what Rachel Held Evans says. She says, imagine if every church became a place where everyone is safe, but no one is comfortable. Where everyone is safe, but no one is comfortable. You see, resurrection is not for the timid. It's not for those who are just seeking to be comforted and comfortable. No, it's for the courageous. It's for those willing to be uncomfortable as they ascend to new life and new stages of faith. In the book we've been reading on Tuesday by scientist Ilia Delio, Reflections on God, Science, and the Human Journey, here's what she says. She says, we constantly pray to God to make order out of our chaotic lives. But what if God is the very source of our chaos? What if chaos and disorder are not to be shunned and avoided, but attended to and embraced? Nature shows us that life is not meant to be nice and neat and controlled, but lived always on the edge between order and disorder, between resurrection and ascension. And that's where we are today. As we pivot towards the ascension, we are being challenged to let go of the old. And may the Easter story assure us that what seems like an amorphous mess is actually a highly organized, protein-rich soup from which new life will emerge. May the Easter story remind us that within the seeming disorder and chaos, there awaits a deeper and more natural order awaiting our discovery. May the Easter story assure us that we are truly safe in an ever-changing, ever-evolving universe. And with faith in Jesus Christ, we can even learn how to be a little bit more comfortable being uncomfortable. And Jesus' words may seem harsh, but they are the most loving and powerful words that we could ever hear when we find ourselves in that pivot point. Don't cling to the old, he's saying. Don't cling to the old awareness. Don't cling to the old insight. Don't cling to the old set of values. Don't cling to the old set of priorities. Don't cling to the old understanding of justice. Don't cling to the old understanding of faith. Give thanks and bless it, for it has served you well for a period of time, but it no longer serves you well. And it's time to let it go and to prepare yourself for something new, something better. Something that will meet this moment in your life. So on this resurrection day, let us be faithful to the new voice. Let us be equipped by a new spirit so that Christ can lead us to the new life that we are called to live. May it be so. Amen.